covering the Barrius as the synthetic tried to hack her way into the mainframe of the suicidal AI running the station, trying to get us access to its core. The machine intelligence hadn't been suicidal when we'd first come on board. It had been perfectly welcoming then. It was only after Shaz tried to access some of its internal databanks to track down who had been here before us, otherwise known as the entire reason we were out here, that the machine had gone, well, insane. It had been a trap. The AI wired to self-destruct as soon as someone came asking, that someone being us. Fortunately, it took time to overheat a station's fusion core, time that we could hopefully use to stop that incredibly catastrophic thing from happening. But the machine knew that was what we were trying to do, hence the army of repurposed service bots. Salak was a little busy to respond to Jane's request, given that he was trying to pull his big rock fist out of the center of one of the automatons, but Sho acted in his stead, pulling a magazine from the big bag of bullets the Salak toted everywhere with him, winding up like he was pitching in some sort of sport with a very odd-shaped ball. Sho hucked the magazine through the snapping connections of electricity with a surprisingly good arm. The young wolf had spent several years paralyzed from the waist down. He was mostly better now, thanks to some exo-braces wired directly into his nervous system, but he still had the upper body strength he'd developed hauling himself around without the use of his legs. I fired Bitey dry, trying to hold back the horde as Jane grabbed the thrown magazine and slapped it into her rifle. Of course, even while she was doing that, she took time to berate me. Intelligence gathering does not mean herring off to investigate every Golden Age relic we come across. I had the watch, I responded hotly, beginning to back up toward the others even as I swapped out magazines myself. Our position was going to be overrun. It was just a matter of time. It was my call. We knew the cultists had been through this system, and it only made sense that they would have stopped here. Plus, clearly, I was right. And if we all die here, I hope you take a great deal of solace in that fact. You should have woken me. You should have woken Maris, or the preacher, or Salak. Hell, you should have woken Javi. Wait, why am I last on the list? Javier asked, from far enough away that his voice was coming through the comm, rather than over the sound of fire and electricity and explosions that filled the cavernous reactor. Even through the patchy connection, though, I could still make out his incredulous tone. We are off the maps, Jane, I said through gritted teeth. That wasn't just my anger. It was also a side effect of me gathering up my tech. I let it loose in one big blast, the telekinetic force smashing into the wave of enemies charging up the catwalk at us. That sent them crashing backward into the ranks of the machines behind them, creating impacts that sent limbs clattering across the pipes and into the fire-filled exhaust ducts below. We're out of leads. This was the last system where we had any sort of vector for the cultist transport. I had to. Ladies, perhaps save this conversation for once you're off the death-obsessed space station, Maris said calmly. Of course, he could afford to be calm. He was still safe on board Califon, in orbit around the station, along with his own apprentice, a young Avail called Meridian. Granted, the two of them were still helping, along with the AIs of our networked ships. They'd been diverting energy to other parts of the station, the only reason the reactor core hadn't already overheated. And granted, they'd still die if the entire thing went up in a ball of atomic fire, but at least Maris didn't have dozens of reprogrammed maintenance machines trying to tear his head off his shoulders. No, Jane replied, her voice still just as hot as Maris's was cool. She only ever listens to me when she's through, the preacher shouted, cutting off whatever remark Jane had been about to make and stepping back from the panel. With a sharp jerk, the Barrius unplugged herself from the access port, the connections still trailing sparks. Issa, Sho, you're up. I fired Bitey dry, yet again, then turned, already running, the catwalk shivering under my boots as the entire station began to quake. We were close to a meltdown now, as evidenced not just by the shaking, but by the marked increase in fricking lightning singing over my head and flames belching out of exhaust ports around us. Time was definitely of the essence. As I passed Sho,